Welcome to the second film in our Elements of Architecture series. In it, we look at the elements of a building that are connected to the ground. We will start with the elements of a building that are in contact with the ground, the underside of the building. This part of a building is covered by cost groups 310 foundation pits and 320 foundations. As you can see here, these two cost groups are further subdivided into level 3 groups. The term foundation pit refers to a large hole that's made in the ground in which a building is then constructed. This drawing shows a foundation pit. The earth that has to be removed to make way for the basement of the building is excavated. This excavated material is known as spoil. It's stored temporarily on site, then either used on another part of the site at a later date or taken away to be used elsewhere or disposed of. Treatment of the edges is particularly important. As you will know if you've ever tried to dig a hole in the sand, the walls have a tendency to collapse. To prevent this, the walls need to be sloped or banked at the shallowest possible angle. The angle of banking depends on the type of soil. Foundation pits are usually banked at an angle of between 45 degrees and 60 degrees to the horizontal, as you can see here. If the ground is unstable or there's no space for banking, the walls of the foundation pit are supported by a pit lining instead, as when digging a grave. Buildings are erected on an underlying supporting structure that is in turn placed on the ground. The contact surface between the foundation elements of a building and the ground is a critical interface. The foundations may take the form of pad elements to support single-point loads, such as structural columns, for example. Linear elements, as in the case with strip foundations under walls, or flat elements, as in a raft foundation. The type of foundation depends primarily on the concentration and distribution of the loads, single point, linear, or full surface, and the load-bearing capacity of the ground. This litter bin on the beach is leaning at an angle because its weight is concentrated on 4 thin legs in the sand, which makes a poor foundation. The stability at the 4 points of contact varies, so the litter bin is in danger of falling over. Sinking the 4 legs deeper into the ground, placing a slab between the legs and the sand to distribute the load evenly, or reinforcing the sand would all help. More or less the same methods are available for stabilizing a building. In the case of a raft foundation, footings disperse the building loads to the ground over a large surface area. A system of footings in which a building is set on piles is referred to as a deep or pile foundation. These foundations achieve the necessary stability either by creating friction with the ground or by extending down deep to load-bearing strata. Load-bearing capacity can also be increased by improving the ground through soil replacement, laying a geotextile membrane, or injecting a stabilizing material, for example. In addition to transferring building loads from the superstructure to the ground, foundations play 2 other important roles. Firstly, a building must be protected from external damp caused by groundwater, rainwater and vadose water running down slopes, downward percolating rainwater, and ground moisture. The underside of the house and any components located in the ground must be sealed from the outside. This water must also be carried away from the building by means of drainage. Secondly, a building can lose internal heat through its foundations as well as its external walls. If rooms adjacent to the ground are to be heated, they must therefore also be protected from the outside against transmission heat loss by means of thermal insulation. Summary. The underside of a house, that is its foundation pit and foundations, can be found in cost groups 310 and 320 respectively. A foundation pit is a hole that is dug in the ground and in which a building is then constructed. To do this, it's necessary to excavate earth. To prevent the sides of the pit from collapsing, a sloping or banked edge is created. The contact surface between the foundation elements of a building and the ground is a critical interface at which building loads have to be transferred from the superstructure to the ground. In addition, the building must also be protected against damp and transmission heat loss. Our Elements of Architecture series continues with film number 3. In it, we take a look at the vertical elements of a building.